Hi there, and welcome back to the Ingrain Workshop. I'm Rick. I'd like to take a moment and thank all the new subscribers to the channel. Your support and comments are always greatly appreciated. And if you're new to the channel and you like DIY projects, then hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. So in today's video, we're going to be finishing up the trim out in the workshop. We're going to be working on the south wall of the workshop. So let's get started. So in last week's video, I showed you how to bend a offset in conduit. This week, we're going to learn how to bend a 4-point saddle. So here's what a offset looks like that I showed you last week. So that's a 3 1/8 inch offset here at the end of the conduit. And then at the top end of the conduit, I've got another offset. This one is a 3/4 inch offset. And then here is the 4-point saddle that I'm going to show you how to do today. And the 4-point saddle, as you can see, shows you how to get across an obstruction. So this obstruction is 3/4 inch by 3.5 inches wide. And this is what a saddle looks like, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. Okay, so here I'm going to take my conduit. You can see I've already got the 3/4 inch offset at the top of the conduit. Then I'm going to take and mark the location of the 1x4 that I'm trying to bend the saddle around. The actual 1x4, the actual dimensions are 3/4 inch by 3.5 inches. So I'm just going to make that mark on the conduit so I'll know where to start my two offsets, because basically a 4-point saddle is just two offsets. They're not back-to-back offsets, but they're two offsets that face one another. So the first thing you have to do is mark the location of where the trim piece is going to hit on the conduit, and that's these two marks right here. And then I'm just going to kind of shadow in where the actual 1x4 would be in relation to the conduit. And then what I'm going to do is take, since we're only going to have to raise the conduit 3/4 inch, I'm only going to use a 10-degree bend. Now you could use a 22-degree bend, but you probably wouldn't need to use anything larger than that. So in this instance, I'm just going to use a 10-degree bend, and the multiplier for a 10-degree bend is 6. So 6 times 3/4 inch is going to give you 4.5 inches. So what I'm doing is I'm just marking from my first position 4.5 inches back. And then I'm going to do the same thing at my second mark, which would be the bottom of the trim piece. I'm going to measure down again the multiplier of 6 times the thickness of the board, which was 3/4 inch. So 6 times 3/4 inch is 4.5, and that's what I'm measuring down. So now I've got 4 points on the conduit, hence the word 4-point saddle. So you've basically got 4 bending points that you're going to have to bend this conduit at. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and label them. This is going to be my first bending point, and then the second position is right here. So those are my first and second bends, and then I go up the pipe and make my third and fourth bends. It's very important that you keep track, because once we bend the first offset, we're going to have to rotate the conduit and bend from the other direction. So here I've got my bends number 1, bend number 2, and then bend number 3 and 4. So that's the order in which we're going to bend our 10-degree bends in this piece of conduit. So I'm going to go ahead and just start at the number 1 bend. You can see the shaded in portion, which is where the
actual 1x4 is going to hit on the conduit. So at the first bending point, I'm going to line that mark up with the bending arrow on the conduit, and then I'm going to take and bend it down to 10 degrees. And I've already got an offset at the top of the conduit, so I've got to sight down the conduit and make sure I'm in line with my 3/4 inch offset at the top of the conduit. That way I don't have a dog leg in the conduit. So I'm going to go ahead and make my first bend here, and then I'm going to take and move the conduit down, and then I'm also going to rotate it exactly 180 degrees. And again, you're doing that because you don't want to put a dog leg in your conduit. So here I am at the second bending point, and I'm going to line that mark up with the bending arrow on the bender. And then once I've got it at the bending arrow, I'm going to make sure that I've rotated it exactly 180 degrees and go ahead and put in my 10-degree bend here. So that's going to complete my first offset. And you can see there, it's basically just a 3/4 inch offset from the bottom of the 1x4. Now I'm rotating the conduit because you always want the bender pointing toward your obstruction. So you can see the head of the bender is now pointing toward where the 1x4 is going to be located on the pipe. That's very important. You want to make sure always that when you're bending for a saddle, that the bender is always pointing toward the offset. So here I'm putting the bending arrow on the third mark on the conduit, and then I'm going to line it up. See, I almost made a mistake and bent it the wrong way right there. So I did catch myself, but I'm making sure right now that I've got it exactly in line with the other bend. And once I've got it lined up, then I'll go ahead and put the 10-degree bend here at the third mark. And again, it was a little harder on this end because I didn't have that much conduit to work with. And the shorter the piece of conduit, the harder it is to bend. But I did get the bend in, and now I'm rotating it 180 degrees, sliding the pipe down to the fourth mark or the fourth bending joint. And then I'm going to make sure that it's lined up with the other bends just to make sure there's no dog leg. And then I'll go ahead and put the 10-degree bend in this one, and then that will finish up the second offset and will complete the 4-point saddle. And that saddle will be enough for us to get over that 3/4 inch piece of trim that's on the side of the wall. You can see here that I actually had to take my hand off the bender and use it to get more leverage because I'm at the very end of the conduit, and it's just so much harder to put the bend in when you don't have a lot of conduit to work with. And then you can see the saddle here. There's plenty of room to get up and over the 3.5 inch wide piece of trim on the wall. And then that's pretty much what it looks like. So now I'm going to go over to the wall and then just do a test fit and see how everything's lining up. And you know, it's lining up perfect. Again, I've got a 3/4 inch offset at the top, and then I've got my 4-point saddle there at the top piece of trim. And now I'm taking and just measuring up off the finished slab 48 inches and marking on the conduit so I'll know where to cut. And now I'm bringing it back over to my table saw, and I'm going to use my Sawzall with a metal blade on it to go ahead and cut the conduit. I'm sure there's other ways to cut metal conduit, but you do have to start out slow because you don't want the blade to walk down the conduit and get off your mark. So just start out slow, and then once you get an initial cut, then you can speed it up and kind of go through the cut pretty quickly. And that's going to leave a lot of burrs, so just take your needle nose clines and ream out the inside of the conduit and then take them and ream out the outside of the conduit just to make sure there aren't any burrs that might potentially cut the insulation on your Romex. And so now I'm taking, because I do have to put another offset on this end of the pipe, I'm measuring 2 inches, and I believe it was 2 1/4 inches. And what that is that's for the 3/8 inch offset where the pipe terminates into the outlet box. So the reason why you measure 2 inches from the end is because you cannot bend pipe at the very end of the pipe, because you'll deform the pipe and make it oval shape instead of round. So the rule of thumb is just to measure back 2 inches for your first bend, and then take your multiplier. In this case, our multiplier is still 6 times 3/8 of an inch, left me 2 1/4. So, I've got the conduit at the first bending mark, and then I'm going to just take and put a 10-degree bend in it. Again, making sure all my other bends are lined up, because you definitely don't want a dog leg. And then go ahead and make your 10-degree bend, rotate it 180 degrees, slide it down to your second mark, and then put your second bend in. So because this was at the opposite end of the conduit, I had a lot of conduit behind me, so I had plenty of leverage to make these bends. These bends were very easy compared to the previous ones. And there's the 3/8 inch offset, so the pipe can terminate into the outlet box. So now I'm just going to go over and unwind my Romex, and once I get it unwound, I'll be able to take that piece of conduit, which I went outside and painted black. All my conduit's black instead of leaving just the galvanized finish on it, and then I can start feeding my Romex through the conduit. And a rule of thumb is, I don't think you're supposed to have more than 270 degrees worth of bends in a piece of conduit, because it just makes it hard to pull it through. I think here we've got maybe 10, 20, 30. I think we've got like 60 or 80 degrees worth of bends in this particular piece of conduit, with the offset at both ends and then the 4-point saddle. I believe that's 80 degrees worth of bends. So you can see the Romex pulls fairly easy through the conduit. And like I said, I think you can have up to maybe 270 degrees before you start having trouble pulling wire through the conduit. And then once I get it in place, I'm going to just make sure it's lined up, and then go get some conduit straps. And once I get the 1/2 inch conduit straps in place, since this is the first one, I really don't need to make sure it's plumb right here. I just need to make sure that it's lined up with the hole in the ceiling, which is where the Romex is coming out of. And once I've got that lined up, I'll go ahead and pop in 2 screws here and get this first conduit strap in place. And then once I do that, then I'll go get my torpedo level, and then it's got a magnetic end on it, and place it next to the conduit, make sure I've got it plumb, and then put a second conduit strap on. And what I did is I tried to put the conduit straps at the bottom of the bends. So you'll see I'll put one here at the top, and then I'll put one at the 4-point saddle, and then I'll just work my way down the conduit, and then finally put my final conduit strap down where the 3/8 inch offset is at the bottom of the pipe, where the pipe is going to join the outlet box. Another thing you got to watch out for too is to make sure that, because you've got these bends in the conduit, is to make sure that the conduit is not leaning to the left or right. Now, you can have it plumb, but if it's leaning to the left or right, your bends are going to look like there's a dog leg in it. So you have to make sure that all the joints are all lined up and are vertical in relation to one another. So here it is. I'm just popping in the second conduit strap, and then there's the third one, which is again right at the bend of the 3/8 inch offset that I put in. And once I've got that plumb, then I'll go ahead and pop a couple of screws in this conduit strap, and then that will do it for this vertical piece of conduit. And then I can just come back and put in the outlet box. So here's the installed conduit with the 3/8 inch offset down at the bottom, and then our 3.5 inch 4-point saddle, and then the 3/4 inch offset at the top. Now I'm just taking my double duplex outlet box and taking the 1/2 inch knockout that was in the center of the box and just knocking it out, and then I'll put in a slip fitting that has a lock nut on one end, and that feeds through the box and locks the fitting to the box. And then there's a set screw in the slip fitting, so the conduit will just slip inside the slip fitting, and then you just tighten up the set screw. And these boxes are pretty easy to install. Once you get the slip fitting on there, you can just feed the conduit through the slip fitting and through the box, and then take your torpedo level and make sure you've got it level, and then just pop you a couple of screws inside the box. And then once you've got the box fastened to the wall, then I come back and tighten up the set screw that's at the slip fitting at the top of the box. And then I can branch off of this box, because this is my center box, and then I'm going to have outlets on both sides of the box. I think you can see the one to the right, so I'll have to take my Kleins and knock out the 1/2 inch knockouts on both sides of this box, and then run conduit from the middle box over to the end boxes. So once I've got it plumb here, I finish popping in all the screws, and then, like I said, I'll come back and tighten the set screw in the slip fitting, and then I'll start wiring up everything. And I went over all this in last week's video, so I'm not going to do it in this week's video, so I'll probably just fast forward through the installation process. All right, well, that completes the electrical trim out on the south wall. So now I'm just going to start going through the workshop, putting everything away, and just slowly start moving everything back in place. And this pretty much will complete the second half of the workshop. I finished the first half last week in last week's video, and this is going to finish up the second half of the workshop. Okay, so I've now completed the electrical trim out on the south wall. And let me show you how that turned out. I was able to go ahead and move all the shop equipment and stuff back in place, so everything's kind of in their temporary home until I start the shop reorganization. But let me go ahead and show you how the electrical trim out on the south wall turned out and how all the equipment looks now that everything is back in place. Okay, so starting here at the front door, next to the front door, I have a workstation. It's a metal workstation that I had bought from Sam's about 10 years ago. And then it's got 3 wall cabinets. The reason why I haven't installed the wall cabinets because these metal cabinets really don't go with the decor now, since the workshop is, you know, rustic and cabinet looking. So I'm probably going to build base cabinets and wall cabinets that kind of match the decor of the workshop now. But you can see the electrical that I installed here on top of the workstation. I've got, I went ahead and installed 3 double duplex outlets, and I'm currently using those to charge all my electronics, my tools, my drills, everything. And then, and you can see where I installed the metal conduit from the ceiling down to this location, and then I branched off in either direction. You can't see the other double duplex outlet because it's behind the cabinets. And then next to that, I've got a metal storage cabinet, which also matches the metal workstation. It was also bought at Sam's the same time. But I am going to keep this because this houses all the flammables, you know, all the paints, the stains, the mineral spirits, paint thinner, lacquer thinner. I store all my chemicals in this cabinet, and I just feel more comfortable keeping it in a metal cabinet versus building a wooden cabinet. So this cabinet will probably stay. This probably isn't the permanent location for it, but it will definitely stay. And then next to that cabinet, I have tool storage. This tool storage will probably go away and be replaced with base and wall cabinets. I just find that that's more of an effective way of storing the tools here in the workshop. And then next to that is my router, or my lathe. And this is a jet lathe. I don't know how many inches. And then it's on a lathe table that I built back in 2000. So this will be a future project once we start with the shop organization projects, building a new lathe cabinet for lathe storage and everything. And then next to this, you can see I installed, just like on the other side of the wall, 3 double duplex outlets. So they're all trimmed out. The other one's behind the toolbox. But this is going to give me plenty of electrical along the south wall. I shouldn't have any issues with not having enough power. And then next to the lathe, I have a set of file cabinets. And you know, these typically would not be in a workshop. I use them because I store old post office box doors for gifts and projects that I do. And you'll see those in an upcoming future video as well. And then on top of the file cabinets, I just have some small screw storage. And again, all this will probably more than likely go away when I start all the shop organization projects. So that pretty much completes the south wall. And then last week I completed the east wall. You can see the wood rack, and then my bandsaw and drill press. And then on the north wall, I've got my miter saw station, and then my planer,
dust collection, router table, belt sanders. So the only wall that isn't finished is the west wall, because the west wall has a little bit more trim out work that needs to be done. I've got to figure out how to trim out around the overhead door. I think what I'm going to do, since I've got a air hose running up one side of the door and then a water line running up the other, all the way up to the top, I'm probably going to build 2 faux columns that go all the way up, and then build a horizontal box to box in the roll-up door. Of course, you know, now that it's down, it's not as large, but once you roll it up, that the roll-up portion gets larger, so I'll have to design a box that's going to fit the door when it's in the up position. And then I'm thinking about taking and building 2 barn doors that are going to have 2-inch insulation behind them, and that's what's going to cover up the large majority of the roll-up door. And I think that'll really make the west wall look more like an accent wall. I think the barn doors will really look nice once I get them completed, and it'll really hide the overhead door. And then I've also got the electrical chase that I have to finish up. And once I finish up the electrical chase and the overhead door, then I can start trimming out the west wall and completing the electrical work on that wall. And then the shop rehab will be 100% complete. And then you'll see to the left of the overhead door, I've got my air compressor, and then I've got another tool storage, which, you know, will go away as well. So everything here is going to be definitely remodified during the shop organization projects, just from the miter station to the router table. Everything's going to be rehabbed. And then here I'm going to have a sink next to the refrigerator, so I'll probably have base cabinets from the electrical chase over, base cabinet with a sink in it, and then wall cabinets up and over the refrigerator, and then that will probably complete the rehab. And so that's kind of where we're at. You can look around and see a big difference from when I started the rehab project. I'm also going to take these white doors and I'm going to do something with them. I'm going to put maybe barn wood on them, again, just to make them look rustic. Maybe just a thin, not a veneer, but maybe a 1/4-inch veneer of barn wood, and just screw to the metal. Again, just to conceal the white metal doors, so everything in the shop will have that rustic look, and I'll do the same thing to the back door as well. So I think when I do the entry doors that way, and then have the barn door covering up the overhead door, it's really going to make it look rustic in here. And then once I start the shop organization projects and I start upgrading the outfeed table, the miter saw station over there, the router table, the lathe, the workstation here, I think it's really going to make for a very nice workshop once I get it complete. But there's still a lot of work and a lot of videos to do. But I hope this gives you some ideas on what you can do to a metal building. This is a metal building, and you can definitely turn it into a rustic barn or a rustic cabin, and it really gives it a nice feel and makes it a nice work environment to come into. Well, that's going to wrap up this video on trimming out the south wall electrical in the workshop. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helps you out in your project. Again, I want to take a moment and thank all the new subscribers. Your supports and comments are greatly appreciated. And if you're new to the channel and you like DIY projects, by all means, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell.
Now get out there and create, build, and inspire, and as always, pay it forward. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. This is Rick at the Ingrain Workshop.